Hi, I'm Dave Kesey, founder of the Innovation Leaders Club. In this video, we'll be looking at how to apply lean startup into a strategic innovation perspective. Strategic innovation means the scope of innovation is broader than an extension, and it comes with uncertainties. Because of those uncertainties, we have to make hypotheses, and when we do learn as we move along, there are hypotheses that will ended up being wrong or are maybe underestimated. And this is the whole challenge about strategic innovation. So we have to add those assumptions, and ultimately sometimes we ended up failing and we don't know why, because we had too many assumptions at the same time. Lean startup approach is a way of trying to make some assumption and try to validate assumption as we move along. Not to have that many in parallel, but try to validate, I would say, the most uncertain one to begin with, or the feasible one to begin with. And as you move along, build upon that knowledge that you have validate, which is called the validated knowledge. So let's start this video and we'll come back later in.
This video from the Innovation Leaders Club explores why the lean startup development approach is better for strategic innovation. The traditional development approach usually requires market research and a business case to justify any investment or development effort. Unfortunately, the business case is often a static document, while the market keeps evolving from when the market study is completed until the innovation is launched. Learn how to proceed by using the lean startup approach. We have developed a 60-page visual guidebook on how to develop an innovation strategy. It is a fully illustrated step-by-step guide to building the foundation of an innovation system. Click the link in the description below to download it for free. Traditionally, managing businesses involves annual plans, annual objectives, and project plans. When something goes wrong, it's easy to blame it on a faulty plan or poor execution. When presenting an innovation project, the typical approach is the traditional waterfall model. The first step is the market research, where the market and customers are studied to identify needs. Second, a business plan is built. This is to justify the project while projecting a financial forecast and returns. Lastly, if everything has been accepted, the plan is executed as planned. So what's wrong with this approach? With this typical approach, key assumptions and the hypothesis of the business plan are too uncertain. There's no iteration in the process. As the plan proceeds to execution, things are undoubtedly learned, and there are too many possible outcomes. There is no certainty when looking towards the future. When the business plan is built up front, there is a need to eventually validate the hypotheses, even with market research. If you wait until the plan's execution to verify what comes next, the whole business plan remains one big, wild guess. Most importantly, in this waterfall approach, the business plan is a dead document, a milestone. It will not be revised or updated along the way. It might be consulted to assess the performance a year from now, but rarely is it a living document. Steve Blank is an American serial entrepreneur, educator, author, and speaker. He lives in California, where he became a billionaire. He is known to have launched the lean startup approach movement. One of his famous quotes is, "No business plan survives first contact with customers." The point is, how can you ask a plan when there is too many unknowns in an unpredictable environment? Rather than using the conventional waterfall approach, it's best to start with small-scale market research, a business plan, and an execution. This is also called the lean startup approach, and it doesn't take as much time as the waterfall approach. It can lead to learnings that will allow innovators and companies to adapt, adjust, and perfect the plan. When looking at the life of innovation, making smaller steps to gain insight is far more ideal than building a voluminous business case. The perfect business plan will emerge from small iterations, and the product or innovation grows from that. It also allows you to learn more and learn quickly. For more details on the fallacy of the perfect business plan, this article written by Steve Blank and published in the Harvard Business Review explains why a perfect business plan emerges from small iterations. To dive deeper into the subject, you might want to read the book The Lean Startup, written by Eric Ries, which describes the whole process in detail. When you have an idea of a value proposal, it's all assumptions. A pivot is a radical change of direction on one or more components of the business model. It becomes necessary when tests reveal that assumptions do not match reality. When testing is late or when anything goes wrong, it can be perceived as a failure. Consider this in a situation when you're working on the design and need to justify changes with upper management. As time goes on, designers may become less willing to make modifications to their innovations. Some club members even say, over time, the developer may fall in love with their innovation and be unwilling to change anything. To summarize, testing early is always positive because it validates assumptions with reality. Then you learn and get to make something worthwhile out of it, whether it is to persevere if the results are positive or to pivot when the results are not as expected. Knowing when to persevere or pivot is a vital part of the validated learning process. Keeping in mind that you need to test early, how would you revisit the business plan preparation? Yes, the learning techniques should be identified first, before starting the product development process. To identify your learning techniques, you can use the validation board, which helps you identify your riskiest assumption and plan how you will validate it. Another interesting tool is the Value Proposition Canvas from Strategizer. Use the link below to watch their YouTube video on how to use it. Identifying the learning techniques first enables you to start with the right questions and problems. Rather than taking multiple stops to get to your destination, you can get a lot of your answers early.
Now let's have a look at a club member example. Frida, they are a fruit producer, more precisely into the berries, like the small fruits. So you will see the direct link between the different steps of the lean startup and the validation and how you get innovation to mature. Because ultimately, that's what you're looking at. You're trying to, before you get to a launch, you're trying to get innovation to mature in order to launch something that has better chance of success. So let's have a look.
A good example of a learning process include these 4 learning techniques: usage and attitude, idea selection, co-creation, and home testing. To start with, usage and attitude involves getting to know the customers, their habits, preferences, annoyances, and needs. The second step, idea selection, tests preliminary ideas to determine the proper value of the idea as the value proposition stage. In the food and beverage industry, it is easier to visualize this with the help of a good graphic artist, or just a hands-on in the kitchen for prototyping. Next, co-creation goes into more detail of the concept through a recipe, software, service, or other avenue. At the end of the front end of innovation is home testing, which is more of a fine-tuning. It begins by sending out prototypes. After converging a few of your ideas, sending out the prototypes helps in confirming whether or not you have the right concept. Bathroom products, for example, involve fine-tuning the installation process. To summarize, in the beginning, the business model is a collection of assumptions or hypotheses. The top assumptions are selected to be tested first, for instance, the riskiest assumptions. After that, these hypotheses are tested in an experiment in a business setting involving measurements such as interviews, surveys, and other tools for market measurement. It is the start of the learning process using minimum viable products. The findings of this testing are called validated learning.
Next, we'll be looking at how to apply the lean startup within a large and established organization, especially an organization that has already product development or innovation development process, like a stage gate, for instance, where there's phases and there's gates. And so we'll look at how we can apply a fast word. You'll see the example with General Electric, which are in the utility, mainly for producing electricity. They are in aerospace industry and also in the medical equipment. You'll see how they use fast work as a separate process as their traditional development process. What is interesting, it's depending on the level of uncertainties, then you will decide if you're going through your standard process or into the fast work process. What is interesting, it's the fast work, it sends the message that as we're going to learn through the process, we might make some change as we move along. So the end result might be slightly or quite different from what we begin with. While the development process, more traditional stage gate-like process, if you ended up with something at the end which is different from what was approved, let's say at gate 2, it's kind of a failure. So the fast work, it is when there's a lot of uncertainties, and also we allow ourselves and we send the message to the organization that we're going to make changes as we move along. So let's have a look at this example.
Established organizations are still learning about the lean startup approach. General Electric mandated Eric Ries to develop their version of the lean startup approach named FastWorks, pictured here. Notice that FastWorks starts at the top with customer need and proceeds with potential solutions to get ahead in problem solving. Based on the preliminary projected solutions, GE's innovators identified its leap of faith assumptions. The first thing they do is list the riskiest assumption to validate whether or not the solution is viable. After that, they test their assumptions by building minimal viable products, commonly called MVPs. MVPs are described as the cheapest and simplest way to test the assumptions with a potential client in order to gain knowledge. This learning is defined by learning metrics, which serves to test the MVP. Once the test result is available, the team decides whether to preserve the solution or pivot to a modified solution.
I hope you found this video useful. What is interesting in this video is the lean startup, which was developed for startup, can be used for established organization. So if you have already innovation development process in place, having this startup process in parallel allows you to change the way you manage innovation depending on level of certainties. So what we have seen also, some club members have started to introduce agility within their stage gate. So at the different gates, they would have the ability to pivot, to look at, to make changes to the original scope as they move along. And that was not what is part of what we would call a stage gate second generation. The second generation is really the traditional stage gate, but this will move to the third generation stage gate. So let's discuss this in another video. Cheers.
If you haven't already done so, you can get your hands on our popular 60-page visual guidebook for free. Click the link in the description below. Don't hesitate to watch the next video to learn even more about innovation management practices.